Glove, GP2. He'll be healthy this year for the Warriors.
What'd you have? Truly?
Training preseason schedule already announced.
I'm excited.
They'll play the Lakers twice, the Kings twice, play the Spurs to end it. Victor Wembanyama probably won't play in that game. But 2 bobbleheads you could get: a Steph Curry graduation bobblehead from Davidson and a paper airplane Klay Thompson. Paper plane Klay. 2 bobbleheads, 5 games, 2 up in SAC. Or excuse me, 1 in SAC, 1 in LA, 3 at Chase Center. Preseason slate. Check out Warriors.com for that. They will be back in our lives before you know it.
Oh, yeah. But it's NFL talk, Bonte. Come on. Hall of Fame game was last night.
Sure, NFL talk or Indoor Football League talk?
Ooh. Bay Area Panther talk? We can do that.
Title game gets a Sioux Falls Storm.
Woo!
Kickoff Saturday, which is tomorrow at 1 o'clock. You can hear it right here on 95.7 The Game. Should have sent Evan Giddies and Mark Grandy out for that call. They were on the call for all the Panther home games. They should be going to Henderson,
You want
Nevada.
single Evan out in Vegas, Bonte?
Absolutely. He can handle his own.
Can he?
Yeah. He's a big boy.
Evan's a professional. He'd be able to handle it.
The game's at 1 o'clock.
Vegas never sleeps.
Yeah, you don't sleep on Saturday night.
Is New York the city that never sleeps?
Vegas, too.
Okay.
They all don't
Actually,
sleep.
no. Vegas, like at 3 or 4 in the morning, you walking around the strips, kind of a little eerie out there.
No doubt.
Get out Fallout New Vegas.
All right, London, relax. Chill. You're on the edge today. Why is everybody on the edge today? It's a Friday. We all got paid today. You should be happy.
This quarterback convo's got people edgy. Maybe we'll talk to Jordan Elliott about it.
Well, yeah, let's talk to Jordan Elliott about it. Splash Cousin covers the Niners for Niner Nation. Frequent guest on the Morning Roast, as he was all last season. One of the many up-and-coming writers. And he breaks down the film very, very well. He's been at camp. He's been at practice. He's locked in on the Niners situation. And let's just start here, Jordan. We're having some fun. We're talking about last season. Brock Purdy, in your eyes, and you break down a lot of film, and these rankings can be stupid. I know a lot of people don't like to partake in them, but Brock Purdy, in my opinion, was a top 5 quarterback the last 6 weeks of the season, a season ago. Because we're talking about Justin Herbert and all this stuff, and I thought Brock Purdy outperformed him. What did you see from Brock Purdy? Because obviously he did a lot to secure the number 1 job heading into camp this year for Kyle Shanahan.
Absolutely. I think it's an interesting conversation because I think Brock Purdy, you want to give him the credit for what he does, because I think we've seen in recent seasons it's not possible for just any quarterback to step into Shanahan's offense and execute it at the level Brock Purdy did. They averaged over 30 points per game over the last 6 regular season games that he started, and it was clear that the offense took another step forward from where they had been earlier in the season. The issue, I think, is when you start comparing him to guys like Herbert, is the environment matters so much. And I just think if you put Justin Herbert in Brock Purdy's place, I would have a hard time believing that Herbert wouldn't do as well, if not better. And if you put Brock Purdy in that Chargers offense with some of the injuries they had and the coordinator they had calling plays last year, I don't think he would have played quite up to the same level. So I don't want to take anything away from Brock Purdy. I just think it gets very difficult to compare, and it always makes it more difficult when you're comparing somebody who's not in Kyle's offense because of how how open a lot of these looks get, the way they scheme so many things open, and just how deep the playmakers are. So it takes nothing away from Brock Purdy. I agree, he was fantastic. The offense was electric when he was out there, which is why I really didn't think there was a quarterback controversy heading into camp this year. So I'm with you. He played very well, but I would pause a bit before saying that he was better than Justin Herbert personally.
Yeah, just in those 6 games. In those 6 games. Not better than Justin Herbert at all. Natural ability. Never, not saying that. In those 6 games, though, you could say that Purdy played a better quarterback than Justin Herbert, but we can argue until we're blue in the face. This year, does Brock Purdy, if he remains healthy, have the capability of being a top 10 quarterback in the NFL? Because I believe that he can in this offense with all these weapons.
Yeah, absolutely. I think especially if you look at efficiency numbers and you look at just, again, putting up points and scoring the way they did last year and just keeping the offense on schedule, I think absolutely he's a guy that could fall into that top 10 ranking. I think it all depends on what your view of what a top 10 quarterback is. But if we're going based off of objective metrics and things that can be tracked with statistics and numbers, yeah, I absolutely think he can, because as a rookie, he came in right away and he was, leading a top 5 offense based on all those numbers and that efficiency. So I definitely think if he stays healthy, he would be in that conversation.
So what have you seen so far? You've been down at training camp. You've seen all these quarterbacks going on. What have been some of your big takeaways from this quarterback battle for number 2 and for Brock Purdy coming off major surgery?
Absolutely. The biggest takeaway I've probably had is that all three of them look really good. And I know that it's really difficult because we've had so much, quarterback controversy the last couple of years. And I think people have this kind of appetite for some kind of extreme one way or the other. They want to hear about if a guy played really well or if a guy was looking really bad out there. And in my eyes, all three of them look solid. And the biggest takeaway I've really had is that if the Niners are in a position where any one of those three are starting the majority of games this season, I think they're still a double-digit win team, and they're a team that could make a deep run with any of those three under center. So, I know the old saying is if you have more than one quarterback, you don't have a quarterback, but I think in the 49ers case, it's not really the case because they know that Brock Purdy's the guy if he's healthy. They've made it abundantly clear. He's the guy he's the only one that's getting exclusive reps with the first team. He looks like a guy who's shaken off a little bit of the rust that was there early on, which was to be expected given the fact that he didn't have an off-season program with the team and he was rehabbing from that injury. But I've been very impressed with Sam Darnold and Trey Lance too. For Sam Darnold, getting to see him up close like this, he's a much better athlete than I think he gets credit for, and we've gotten to see that a little bit, particularly with the amount of times they've had him rolling out, booting to his left, throwing on the run. So I thought that was very impressive. And I think Trey Lance is playing with a lot more confidence than I've seen the last couple of years. He's making a lot of throws with more rhythm than I've seen in previous training camps. So I think they're in a great spot just with the depth of the team.
Bless you, Bonte. Also, Jordan Elliott joining us here on from Niners Nation on 95.7 The Game Morning Roast. Jordan, quick question about Trey Lance. Your overall thoughts on what he could be with this offense going forward? Because we haven't seen a lot from him. 4 games. I think a lot of Niner fans are just hoping that this guy gets an opportunity at some point to show what he can do. And you were just talking about all these guys looking good. Trey Lance, and I asked Bonte this earlier, if you had to wager $100, are you pretty confident that he's going to be quarterback 2 heading into week 1 at Pittsburgh?
To be honest with you, at this point, I would not feel confident about either way, him or Darnold. I don't think either have really separated themselves, and I think it's really going to come down to the preseason, which is what's going to be the ultimate deciding factor there, because it's been very close in camp, and the way they're distributing reps, I don't think there's really a tell yet with how the team's feeling. So I would definitely say that as of this point in time, I wouldn't feel confident really leaning either way. And then as for just, what he could be in this offense, I think he's a guy that the more experience he gets and the more reps he gets, he just needs to build a little bit more rhythm. I think the biggest issue has been this offense is so predicated on staying on schedule and hitting a lot of throws that are timing-based that typically take a lot of reps to develop and get to a point where you're comfortably making those consistently. And that would be the one area I would say that still needs to improve a little bit, where it's just you're seeing some flashes in camp where there's some great throws. He's taking shots down the field. He's being a lot more aggressive. But then there's these quick slants, these quick crossers over the middle where the timing clearly still isn't quite where it needs to be. So I'd be interested to see how that progresses over the remainder of camp and the preseason.
What does your gut tell you if Trey Lance doesn't beat out Darnold for the backup job? Would this organization be ready to move on from Trey Lance knowing that, hey, Brock Purdy, in Shanahan's own words, is the real deal, and he remains healthy? And you bring in Sam Darnold, the former number 3 overall pick out of USC. What does your gut tell you about Trey if he does not beat out Sam Darnold? Will he be on his roster when they head to Pittsburgh week 1, September the 10th?
Bonte, I think if it's up to the 49ers, I think they're absolutely going to keep him. I think that, especially given the way last season ended, they don't want to have any kind of doubt going into the year that they're going to have another championship season basically lost due to injuries at that position. The only way I could really see them looking to move him or moving on is if Trey amicably goes to the front office and is like, hey, you know what, I've come out, I've competed. This clearly doesn't seem to be something that's working. Can we facilitate a move to another team? I could see a scenario where the 49ers would honor a request like that if Trey were to make it, but I don't see a path to them feeling like they could cut him or trade him just based on him not beating out Darnold for that quarterback 2 spot if that's what happens. I genuinely think there still is belief in him there, but the problem I think that they find themselves in is that they might feel like Lance needs a little bit more time to develop, or he might need some more time to get reps, and all the things that go into developing as a young quarterback, which unfortunately he was robbed of last season due to a really unfortunate injury. And I think they're at a point now where they know this window with the team they have, with all the guys that they're going to have to pay, some of the stars who are kind of aging out a bit and getting towards the back end of their careers. They have a very small window to maximize this roster, and I think their feeling is just, we saw what we could do with Brock last season. We feel like this gives us the best chance to win today, but I wouldn't be surprised at all if they're feeling like, hey, Lance is still a guy 3-4 years down the line. He's still going to only be in his mid-20s, which is still very young in the grand scheme of things for an NFL career. I would be really surprised if they were that eager to cut him from the team or trade him just based on this preseason, how it would shake out.
Jordan, you going to be out at Vegas next week for joint practices in Henderson, Nevada?
I will not be. I do not do well with heat. I am not a big fan of it. Thankfully, my editor is going to be out there instead. So I luckily dodged a bullet on that one.
Well, what are you looking for anyways, even if you won't be out there? What is some of the things that the average fan should be looking at joint practices? Because we hear from the players all the time, like, this is the stuff that really means the preseason games, whatever. But it's the joint practices that really get to work out a lot of the kinks leading up to the regular season.
Absolutely. It's probably going to be the most talked about storyline, but I'm really interested to see how that 49ers defense looks against Jimmy. I think that we got to see a taste of it during camp. We got to see kind of them going at it, but it's a little different when it's your teammates. I think that now that he's on a different team, I'm really interested to see if they maybe take it up another notch and they kind of, have this friendly rivalry, kind of take it to another level there. So that would be the number one thing I'm going to watch for, is what does Jimmy G look like against this defense now that they're on opposing teams? And then just kind of, is the intensity level going to be ramped up a bit? Because it feels like this year the practices have been a little bit lighter than the last couple years, and it feels like they're kind of gearing up towards making those joint practices be when they really start ramping things up, and then you start getting into preseason. Next thing you know, we're here at week 1 in Pittsburgh. So I would be really interested to see how much the intensity level jumps up, and which it typically does with those joint practices. It's the first time that you can really hit guys that aren't on your own team. So typically you are going to see guys getting into it a little bit more. You can guarantee there's going to be a couple fights or two breaking out that they're going to have to split up. So I just really want to see where that level of intensity is. But the good thing about the 49ers is that it's a team full of veterans who've been there and who've done that. The team is loaded from top to bottom. I think this is a better roster than last season. So it's not necessarily a case where they have to go out and prove it, because I think they know what's expected of them and they know what the standard is. But I just really want to see if that level of intensity is something where they have just been kind of, pacing this out intentionally until they get to these joint practices, and then they really ramp things up.
What is the biggest concern then? I know you said they're loaded, and I'm with you, Jordan. We're talking to Jordan Elliot, of course, who does a great job for Niners Nation. This team is stacked. But if there's an area of concern on the defense, what area would that be? Would it be the secondary? Would it be up front? What's your take there?
The defense is really good at all three levels.
Yeah.
I would say my biggest concern would probably just be they lost two really good players in Charles Omenihu and Samson Ebukam. Those guys were phenomenal for them each of the last 2 years. And when you have a defensive player of the year in Nick Bosa, it can kind of get overshadowed a bit what some of these other guys are doing on that defensive front. Mm-hmm. I thought that they did an excellent job by bringing Javon Hargrave in. What he's going to do to the interior is going to be it's going to give them a great boost. Him and Eric Armstead are probably going to be one of the better, if not the best, interior duos in the league. But they're asking a lot of a guy, in Drake Jackson, who's a second-year player with a lot of promise, to kind of take that leap and be that number 2 option next to Bosa on the other side of the line. And I just think that it's a good bet on themselves, because they've proven that they can do that in the past and replace guys internally. I just think that the loss of Ebukam and Omenihu is something that, until we see it on the field, right, I'm going to have my doubts that it's something that they can just seamlessly transition over and still get that same level of efficiency.
Offensively, Colton McKivitz, Jake Brendel at center. Of course, McKivitz replacing Mike McGlinchey at right tackle. Is that offensive line, again, the number one concern for the offense?
Mike McGlinchey was a very polarizing player, right? He was somebody that people felt very strongly one way or the other about. But I think one thing most 49ers fans could agree on was he was excellent run blocking, and he was probably one of the preeminent run blocking tackles in all of football.
Right.
And I think that McKivitz is a guy where, he's talked about it a bit, how much he learned from Mike in that regard. Angles, hand placement, all the things that go into being a good run blocker in the NFL. That's an area where I'd really be interested to watch is and again, we're comparing it to the other side where Trent Williams is, so that does have to be taken into account. But I'd be really interested to see the efficiency running to the right side compared to the left. And if that's something that is disrupting game plans a little bit early on where they aren't at that level where they need to be, being able to run off the right side because of the drop-off that's there from Mike McGlinchey, really to anybody that'd be replacing him because he was that good in that regard. But I would be really interested to see if they're able to run off that right side with a similar efficiency.
Real quick here, Jordan Elliott, you're doing a hell of a job, Niners Nation, covering the team. You know everything about them. Nick Bosa, your thoughts on the contract situation here real quick? And are you concerned at all that he hasn't been getting live reps and may not even take part in the joint practices next week in Nevada?
So I think it's a situation where it's like everybody kind of knows what the end result is going to be. Both parties do while they're negotiating this. I think it's a matter of just kind of fine-tuning the details, the guaranteed money, all the, extra stipulations that go into contracts. They're going to pay Bosa. Bosa knows he's going to get paid. I think that it's just a situation where it's maybe not where you want to be ideally, but with Bosa, I have zero doubt in my mind that he's, whether he's in Florida or wherever he's off training, that this guy's eat, sleeping, and breathing football because that's pretty much what it seems like he does 365 days a year. So I don't think it's going to be a scenario where whenever he does make it into camp or whenever he does make it in to practices during the preseason that he's going to be out of shape or somebody that needs to really ramp up conditioning. Like, I would be really surprised if he doesn't just come in and hit the ground running right away because that just seems to be how he's wired. I really don't have too much concern for him missing camp because over the last couple of years, especially when he was coming off the ACL injury in 2021, he did miss quite a bit of team drills. If I remember correctly, I don't think he really participated in much of any team drills in the 2021 training camp. Had a great season that year. So he's just a guy where I think he'll come in, he'll be prepared, and hopefully they get this done sooner rather than later so that we can not worry about it. Because as you do inch closer to the season, then there's maybe a little bit of pause for concern. But the 49ers have a really good track record of getting their star players paid. And I think that Bosa is a guy where he's just, the number that he's going to get is going to be exceedingly higher than a lot of these deals they've done in the past. And I think the biggest thing is the guaranteed money is going to be a lot higher. And I'd imagine that's where the hang up is a little bit. And that's why this hasn't gotten done, because the money that's going to be in guarantees will be significantly higher than what they've given out in the past.
Jordan, last one for you. Elijah Mitchell hurt again. I mean, he got hurt last year against Chicago. It led me to believe that they needed another running back, and they go get Chris McCaffrey midseason. Ty Davis Price's look fresh. You notice that on the first day of practice, let alone what he's doing through 7 days of practice and training camp. And then Jordan Mason, of course, who finished that game in Seattle, up in Seattle to clinch the NFC West. Is Elijah Mitchell in trouble here when it comes to this running back depth chart?
I think as long as he's able to be healthy and not have, a long-term injury, I think he'll make the roster simply based, on the fact that he has never fumbled the ball once during his entire time in the NFL. He has over 350 carries in the NFL in the postseason and regular season. And it's not just like a fumble recovered by the defense. He's never fumbled the ball recovered by his own team, like flat out never fumbled once. And to me, I think that level of ball security is something where Shanahan really knows that he's a reliable player who's not only going to be efficient running the ball, but he's not going to turn the ball over. And that's why I think as long as he doesn't have something where you're really concerned about a long-term injury, he's a guy that's probably going to be safe when it comes to roster cuts. But the upside, as you mentioned, Jordan Mason and TDP, I thought were two of the best players on the field in yesterday's practice. They were explosive. Mason in particular looked really good catching the football. Last year, we really got a good glimpse of what he looked like running the ball, but he looked like a true weapon in the passing game. And TDP looks like a different player this year. He looked a lot, to me, he looked a lot like leaner just based on the eye test. Mm-hmm. But apparently he's actually put on weight since last year. So to me, that means that he's added more muscle. He's trimmed up but gotten stronger at the same time. So I think the room as a whole is in a good spot. But the thing I always come back to with Mitchell is that ball security. It's every time I look at it, it's fascinating because even the best running backs in this league are going to end up coughing the ball up from time to time. And he's carried the ball pretty much, 350 carries is pretty much a full season for an elite back that's a bell cow. And he's never fumbled one time. So I think that that's something for Shanahan where there's so much value in that he's not going to be looking to replace it unless he absolutely has to.
Well, you just jinxed him, by the way, Jordan. Sorry. He's definitely his first carry. He's fumbling it. I didn't even know that stat, so thank you.
Well, hopefully they get it out of the way early week one.
Right.
No doubt about that. Jordan, we can't wait for this football season. Can't wait to have you on once a month. You do an excellent job for Niners Nation. You know everything about the football team. Should be a fun year. What's your, I I guess we'll wait on the prediction stuff. Let's see what happens in training camp. Let's see who's the backup quarterback. Let's see where Brock's health is, and then we'll go from there. Jordan, thanks for the time today on this Good Friday.
Absolute pleasure. Thank you guys so much. Have a great weekend.
Thanks,
Anytime. Jordan Elliott here on the Morning Roast on 95.7 The Game.